Let's expand on the code we wrote last time to set the angles of all three of our servos. Start by clicking on the top design. Here, we need to place additional PWM blocks. We need one block for each servo. So find the TC PWM and drag 2 more of these to your screen. Now, each of these blocks needs to be wired similar to the first block. So we first need to have a digital output pin wired to line for each of these PWM blocks. I'm wiring them here just by lining them up just right. You can also wire these things up by using your wire tool. Each PWM block also needs a clock. You can find this in the System menu. Once you've placed all the pins and clocks, we need to set the settings for each PWM. We'll click on the PWM tab, and we're going to set our prescaler to 4, which is the lowest value that will allow us to set 20 milliseconds. We're going to set the period to 60,000 and the compare value to 0. It doesn't actually matter what you set to be your compare value here, because we're going to set the compare value, which determines the servo angle, inside of our code. So you just have to make sure that you set the prescaler to 4 for each of these and the period to 60,000 to give us our 20 millisecond time in between each pulse. Now we'll set our pins. So go to the CYDWR menu, and we're going to pick some pins here that are listed as being pins that can be used as TC-PWM. I'm going to make mine be 3-1 for pin 2 and 3-4 for pin 3, but you can set whatever pins work with TC-PWM. Now, in the code, we're going to start by just duplicating each one of the things we did here for additional angles. So I change this first angle to angle 1, and then I add on angle 2 and angle 3. I'll have to go back and change this here to angle 3. And I'll do the same thing with ticks. So ticks 1, ticks 2, and ticks 3. Here I'm setting angle 1. I'll set that to 0. We'll set all of our angles to 0 initially. And I'll add in angle 2 and an angle 3. So I need to go back up here and change this angle. It's supposed to be angle 3. There we go. Now I need to also start each of my other PWM blocks. You'll notice that there's a little yellow triangle that gives a warning when I type these in. That just happens because we haven't built this code yet, and I've already placed the PWM blocks in the top design, but we haven't built the code yet. So the PSOC creator doesn't yet know about the other PWM blocks, and that's why we get a warning here. So now, in each of these equations, I need to change the variables to my new numbered variables. So I'm going to make this here ticks 1, and ticks 1 will depend on angle 1. Then I'm going to copy this line, and once I have it copied by hitting Control-C, I can paste it with Control-V, and then I'm going to change this to ticks 2, which depends on angle 2, and I'll paste it again and make this one ticks 3, which is calculated based on angle 3. Then we'll go down here, and in PWM1 we're going to write the value ticks 1, and then I'll copy it. And in PWM2 we're going to write the value ticks 2, and in PWM3 we'll write the value for Tix 3. There we go. Now I have to make another change here. We want the first servo to range between 0 and 180 degrees, just like we calculated. But for the second and third servos, I would like them to range between -90 and 90 degrees so that those two servos will be able to be used to reach down to the surface of the board, or they can reach up to do other things. So instead of ranging from 0 to 180 degrees, I want these other servos to range between -90 and 90 degrees. There's an easy way that we can change these equations to make that happen. And what we're going to do is we're going to remember our 2-point formula, and we're just going to replace every place where we have an x1 or an x2 value. Instead of using 0 and 180, I'm going to use 90 and -90. So this 180 degrees will be replaced by 90. The 0, I'm going to replace that with -90. And I'll do the same here in this other equation as well. Replace 180 with 90 and -90 instead of 0. And then the other place where I have an x1 value is right over here where we have 0, and instead of 0 I want -90. I'll do the same in this other equation. There we go. So now it looks like I have a bunch of warnings because of these yellow triangles, but let's check and see if those go away. The warnings should go away after I build the code. So we'll hit build here and drag this up so I can see the status. After this build is finished, if I don't have any errors, these little yellow warning triangles should all go away. There we go. So it looks like we have no warnings and no errors. We can go ahead and program the PSOC with this code. So I'm going to go click on Program. And when you do this, after you do this, you should plug in your 3 servos to the 3 pins that we set. And the first servo should go all the way counterclockwise, which is its 0 position. The other 2 servos should go right to their center position, which we have set the center position to be 0 for the second and third servos. So if your first servo moves to its far counterclockwise position and your second and third servos move to their center position, you're good to go, and you should move on to the next step, which is to build an articulated manipulator using your 3 servos in such a way that it matches the standard form of a kinematic diagram for an articulated manipulator.